The stars had never seemed so silent. For centuries, the outer worlds of the galaxy had lived in peace, each civilization tending its own corner of space. But now, that fragile peace was crumbling. A darkness moved among the stars, consuming planets and systems alike, leaving only silence behind. It had no name, no face, no mercy. The people of the galaxy called it the Eclipse Swarm, though nobody truly understood it. Ships sent to investigate never returned. Signals from colonized planets stopped abruptly. Worlds went dark, and the survivors of nearby systems fled in terror. In a desperate plea, the leaders of the galaxy's coalition gathered. They had technologies beyond imagination, powers that could bend matter and energy, but against the swarm, none of it mattered. They broadcast a call, a message sent to every corner of known space. Help us. Send your angels. Save us from this nightmare. The message traveled farther than anyone expected. It reached a small, blue planet on the edge of a young galaxy, a planet known for its stubborn and unpredictable people. Humanity had spread across the stars in their own chaotic way. They had no angels. They had no saints. They had demons, warriors, inventors, and explorers who broke rules just to see what lay beyond the next horizon. But to the aliens who sent their plea, humanity's arrival was inevitable. When human ships appeared near the edges of the coalition's space, the alien fleets froze in disbelief. These were not angels. They were enormous vessels, bristling with weaponry that the coalition had never seen before. They did not glide gracefully. They roared into position, engines burning with a defiance that seemed almost alive. And the humans themselves were no less startling. Men and women in armor that reflected starlight moved like predators across their decks, their eyes bright with intelligence and something the aliens could not name. The coalition's ambassadors were the first to meet them. They had expected beings of light, radiant and calm, who would inspire hope with words alone. Instead, they found humans with sharp eyes, sharper tongues, and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "We received your message," the human captain said, his voice steady, almost amused. "You asked for angels, you got us instead." They were polite, measured beings, accustomed to diplomacy and careful negotiation. Humanity had no time for that. They moved fast, spoke faster, and judged situations in terms of results rather than appearances. Some of the alien leaders recoiled at first. How could beings so chaotic, so unpredictable, be trusted with the survival of their worlds? But the swarm moved closer, and there was no time to hesitate. Planets were already falling. The humans wasted no words. They launched reconnaissance probes into the systems that had gone dark. Within hours, they had mapped the swarm's movements and analyzed the energy patterns it left behind. While the aliens debated, humans acted. They built temporary bases on the fringes of affected systems and deployed drones and small strike teams. The first encounters with the swarm were terrifying. It was not a creature or a machine, not in the way any of them had imagined. It moved like smoke, shifting and twisting, consuming everything in its path. Ships fired beams and missiles, only to have them absorbed or deflected by what looked like living darkness. Entire fleets were reduced to wreckage in moments. Yet humanity did not flinch. They studied the swarm, observing its behavior and predicting its next moves. They built adaptive weapons that could change frequency and form mid-flight. They trained pilots to take risks no one else would consider. And slowly, the swarm began to falter where humans fought. Ships that had been lost were returned, rebuilt using alien and human technology in ways that baffled even the most brilliant alien engineers. Despite their successes, the aliens could not hide their fear. They whispered among themselves, saying humanity brought destruction as much as salvation. Every attack against the swarm was brutal, shocking, and often ruthless. Humans did not hesitate to sacrifice machines, strategies, or even their own safety if it meant gaining an advantage. It was a style of war the aliens could not comprehend. Among the humans, there was no cruelty without reason. Every action, every decision was measured in terms of survival and effectiveness. They laughed and joked in the midst of battle, even as systems burned and lives hung in the balance. To the aliens, it seemed demonic. To the humans, it was simply life. A small alien delegation, desperate to understand these strange beings, approached the captain privately. One of them, a scholar with translucent skin that shimmered in light, asked the question the rest feared to speak aloud. You do not fight as we imagined. Why are you here?" And demons get things done. They would board crippled alien ships and refit them with human technology to turn them into weapons. They infiltrated swarm-affected planets to rescue survivors, sometimes using tactics that seemed reckless but always effective. And everywhere they went, they left a mark. Machines that worked, systems stabilized, people alive when death had seemed certain. In one system, an entire city had been swallowed by the swarm. Alien engineers despaired at the impossibility of reclaiming it. Humans sent in a strike team of a dozen, armed with experimental tools and drones. The aliens watched from orbit as the humans navigated streets that shifted like smoke, their drones creating shields and traps. Within hours, the city was partially restored, its people saved, its infrastructure stabilized enough for the aliens to take over the final recovery. The humans emerged, dusty and exhausted, laughing at the difficulty, already planning the next strike. Through these victories, the alien coalition began to understand a simple truth. Humanity was not what they had asked for. They were not angels of light or gentle saviors. They were something far stranger, far more powerful, a species that could defy expectation, break rules, and survive where hope alone could not. Still, not all was easy. There were moments of tension among humans themselves. Some questioned the methods used, debating the morality of their tactics. But in the end, the humans valued life in their own way. They believed in results, in saving as many as possible, even if the methods seemed harsh or shocking to outsiders. The debate was fierce but brief. The swarm was moving, and there was no time for hesitation. As the first part of their mission drew to a close, the humans gathered on a distant outpost to review their progress. The captain stood before the team, looking out at the dark stars beyond the window. "Look at them," he said, gesturing toward the galaxy where planets glimmered faintly in the distance. "They begged for angels. They expected us to shine and soothe. We are not shining. We are not soothing. We are chaos. But chaos works. Chaos survives. And if we survive, so do they. Not for angels, not for mercy, for survival. And they knew now that if survival was possible, it would come from humanity and humanity alone. The galaxy had called for saviors, and it had received demons. But for the first time in centuries, there was hope. And that hope was unpredictable, unstoppable, and entirely human. The humans moved swiftly through the void, their ships cutting paths through starlit emptiness like blades. Each vessel was unique, a product of human ingenuity and improvisation, some built with alien components scavenged from previous encounters. On board, the crew prepared for the unknown, adjusting systems, running simulations, and reviewing strategies that no alien mind could fully comprehend. Their target was the system nearest to the swarm's trail. Reports had come in from nearby colonies, worlds stripped of atmosphere, cities reduced to dust, and survivors hiding in underground bunkers, clinging to life. The humans did not hesitate. Time was the enemy, and hesitation was luxury they could not afford. As they entered the system, alien observers held their breath. The humans deployed a network of drones first, tiny machines that swarmed like flocks of birds. The drones scanned, mapped, and probed the darkness, relaying data back in real time. Some emitted pulses that disrupted the swarm's energy, while others acted as bait, drawing pieces of the darkness away from vulnerable planets. A young human engineer, stationed at the control deck, laughed as she manipulated her consoles. "It's like fishing," she said, her fingers dancing over the holographic display. "You just have to know where to place the lure." Hidden within the system were decoy ships, equipped with energy emitters designed to mimic vital targets. The swarm, deceived, swarmed toward these decoys, giving the humans a chance to strike. Missiles fired, energy beams pulsed, and for the first time the swarm recoiled. It was not destroyed, but it had been slowed. The humans cheered quietly, a brief moment of triumph before the next wave came. Aliens, watching from their transport ships, whispered in disbelief. "They fight like demons," one said, "but they are saving lives." Another added, "I do not understand them, but I cannot deny their power." Some went to defend the colonies still standing, providing shields, repairing infrastructure, and evacuating civilians. Others focused on offense, taking risks that seemed reckless. Pilots diving close to the swarm to plant explosives, engineers rerouting energy to create traps, and soldiers boarding ships consumed or controlled by the darkness to reclaim them. In one daring maneuver, a human team entered the orbit of a planet nearly devoured by the swarm. The surface was dark, jagged, and moving, as if the planet itself was writhing. Alien soldiers refused to follow. It was too dangerous, too uncertain. But humans did not hesitate. They deployed small, agile craft, weaving between the shifting shadows. On the planet's surface, they used grappling hooks and portable energy shields to rescue survivors trapped in crumbling buildings. One soldier, carrying a small child, smiled as the child pointed at a glowing piece of debris. "What is that?" the child asked. "Your new toy," the soldier said, laughing, placing it gently in the child's hands. It was a fragment of alien technology, harmless in their hands, but enough to give a spark of hope to those who had lost everything. Meanwhile, back in space, the swarm tested them, sending tendrils of darkness to consume ships. Humans adapted instantly, changing tactics mid-battle, their ships moving like dancers in chaos. Shields shifted, weapons reconfigured, and the swarm was forced to retreat repeatedly, unable to predict human strategy. The aliens watched, fascinated and horrified. Where they had expected angels to heal and protect gently, they found demons who fought with both brilliance and audacity. The humans were terrifying yet effective, leaving no question about the difference between hope and survival. One of the alien leaders approached the human captain. "You risk everything," the leader said. Why not stay safe and let the swarm pass?" "We fight because someone has to. And if we die doing it, at least we die fighting for something real." Each victory was hard-won. Ships were lost, equipment damaged, and yet the humans pressed on. They salvaged what they could, repaired what was broken, and adapted faster than the swarm could respond. With each maneuver, alien colonies regained a fragment of their world, survivors were brought to safety, and the darkness was pushed back, step by step. Aboard one human ship, the crew gathered around a holographic map showing the swarm's movements. "It's learning," the engineer said, her voice tense. "Every time we hit it, it changes. We have to stay ahead or we'll be swallowed next." Every human aboard, from soldiers to scientists, became part of a single mind focused on survival and victory. They experimented with new weapons mid-battle, rerouted power from engines to shields and back again, and improvised solutions that no one else would dare attempt. The swarm faltered repeatedly, confused and frustrated by the humans' unorthodox methods. Meanwhile, the alien coalition began to rely on the humans more than they expected. They provided ships, technology, and logistical support, but it was the humans' courage and creativity that turned the tide. Slowly, the coalition began to accept that they had not been sent angels, but something far more effective, a species that refused to surrender, even to the impossible. Despite the victories, humans did not celebrate openly. They mourned their losses quietly, honored the fallen, and pushed forward. In the quiet moments between battles, they repaired ships, shared meals, and told stories of past struggles and triumphs. Humor and camaraderie were their armor as much as any shield or weapon, binding them together against the darkness. A young soldier new to this war approached the captain one evening. "Sir," she asked, "do we really stand a chance? The swarm, it's endless. And as long as we keep moving, keep fighting, someone will survive." The swarm had been pushed back, at least temporarily. Alien survivors were safe, their worlds partially restored, and hope, fragile but real, was rekindled across the system. The aliens, once doubtful and fearful, now regarded humanity with awe, tinged with fear. These were not angels who offered comfort. They were demons who demanded courage, ingenuity, and resilience. They were unpredictable, relentless, and frighteningly effective, and yet the aliens could not deny that they had saved what few believed could be saved. Before departure, the human captain addressed the coalition leaders once more. "Remember this," he said, voice firm. "We are not angels. We are not here to soothe. We are here to get the job done. If you want miracles, work for them yourselves. If you want survival, follow our example and hope you can keep up." As the human fleet departed for the next system, the swarm's tendrils stretched outward, reaching for new worlds. The humans were ready. They would continue to adapt, fight, and survive. Each system saved was proof that even in the darkest moments, humanity could prevail where others might fail. And so the humans moved on, leaving behind a trail of hope and fear, of wonder and amazement. They were demons to some, heroes to others, but above all, they were human, and that alone was enough to change the course of the galaxy. The stars themselves seemed to hum in response, a silent acknowledgement that the universe had not seen anything like humanity before. And as the fleet disappeared into the void, the coalition whispered a new prayer, not for angels, not for mercy, but for the humans who had arrived when all else seemed lost. Because in the end, it was not divine light or angelic grace that would save the galaxy. It was human will, ingenuity, and the unbreakable spirit that refused to surrender. And that spirit was just beginning to show its true power. The humans had learned to move faster than the swarm, to predict its attacks and to turn its own chaos against it. Yet with every victory, the darkness seemed to grow smarter, spreading in ways that no map could fully capture. The systems they had saved were safe for now, but the heart of the swarm remained elusive. It had no name, no reason, only hunger and destruction. In the command deck of the flagship, the captain studied a holographic display showing clusters of energy that pulsed like living veins across the galaxy. "It's adapting," said the lead engineer, her fingers tracing lines that shifted under her touch. "Every time we push it back, it moves differently. We can't just repeat tactics anymore." Their ships cut through the void, engines bright and humming with energy. Alien observers watched with both awe and anxiety. Once inside the system, the swarm struck immediately. Dark tendrils spread from the void, wrapping around moons and asteroids, consuming energy and matter alike. Ships under human command split into smaller units, moving in intricate patterns that seemed chaotic but were in fact meticulously planned. Drones darted through the darkness, drawing pieces of the swarm into traps designed by the engineers hours before. The aliens gasped as human pilots executed maneuvers that seemed impossible. Fighters twisted between tendrils, weaving around explosions, and using the very energy of the swarm against it. The darkness recoiled in ways no one expected, disrupted by the humans' unorthodox tactics. On the surface of the largest planet, humans worked in teams to reach survivors. Streets that were once filled with life were now jagged and unstable. Buildings leaned at impossible angles, and energy storms sparked unpredictably from the remnants of alien technology. Yet the humans moved with confidence, shielding civilians with portable energy fields and guiding them towards safe zones. A young engineer adjusted her tool kit as she stepped over the wreckage. "We have to stabilize this area before we can extract them," she said to her team. "If we don't, it will collapse again." They used gravitational anomalies to bend its tendrils back upon itself, creating areas where the darkness could not move. Energy pulses disrupted its cohesion, while human weapons exploited weaknesses that alien scientists had not yet understood. Every time a ship was lost, another adapted its tactics, learning from mistakes in real time. The aliens watched in stunned silence. This was not the careful, graceful intervention they had hoped for. It was violent, it was chaotic, and yet it was saving lives. They began to realize that humanity's so-called demons were the very reason they had survived. But there were costs. Ships were damaged beyond repair. Crews were injured. The strain on humans was growing, though none admitted it openly. They pushed through exhaustion with sheer will, motivated by a sense of duty that the aliens could not fully comprehend. In the midst of battle, a young human medic found herself trapped with survivors in a crumbling building. Outside, darkness crept closer, tendrils lashing against the walls. She quickly assessed the situation. There was no time for hesitation. Using portable shields and field generators, she created a safe corridor, guiding civilians to an extraction point. Each step was tense, every movement precise. And yet, despite the danger, there was laughter, small jokes to ease fear, and quiet reassurances. The humans did not abandon hope, even when surrounded by darkness. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship, the captain convened a strategic council. "We need to understand the swarm," he said. "We can fight it blindly, but that will only slow it. We need to find its source. It's faint, but it suggests intelligence, or at least a mechanism behind its movement." A small strike force would enter the densest part of the swarm, using adaptive cloaking and experimental propulsion to reach the source of its energy. It was dangerous, likely suicidal by most standards, but humans rarely measured risk in the same way as others. As they approached, the darkness shifted violently, sensing intruders. Tendrils lashed out, seeking to engulf them. The ships dodged and weaved, releasing energy pulses that disrupted the swarm's cohesion. Inside the command pods, pilots worked in synchrony, their instincts and training guiding them through a living nightmare. They reached the source, a massive structure suspended in space, older than any human or alien memory. It was not alive in the biological sense, but it radiated intelligence. Ancient technology hummed with energy, controlling the swarm as if it were a weapon gone rogue. Humans examined it quickly, recording every detail, their minds racing to understand and to find a way to stop it. Back on the surface planets, humans coordinated evacuations and repairs. Survivors watched with awe as humans directed resources, stabilized systems, and repelled darkness with methods that seemed almost magical. Small children clung to human soldiers, seeing not demons but guardians who moved boldly where angels had failed. The alien coalition began to see a new reality. Humanity did not follow the rules they knew. They did not offer comfort in the way expected. They did not ask for gratitude, and yet they saved worlds. They destroyed threats that no angel could face, and in every system they touched, hope was rekindled, fragile but undeniable. Hours later, the strike team returned from the swarm's heart. They brought with them data that promised a solution. The swarm could be disrupted, even defeated, if they could synchronize human ingenuity with alien technology. But the plan was risky. Failure meant total annihilation for the entire system. The captain addressed his crew. "We've done impossible things before. We've saved lives when none believed it could be done. This is no different. We fight, we adapt, and we survive." That's humanity. Entire fleets shook as tendrils collided with shields, dark energy pulsed in waves, and the void seemed to scream with the clash of power. Yet humans remained focused. Every ship, every pilot, every soldier and engineer knew their role, and they executed it flawlessly, improvising where necessary, adjusting where needed, and refusing to give an inch. On the surface, humans continued to stabilize cities and rescue civilians. Engineers worked tirelessly, soldiers stood guard against residual threats, and medics healed and reassured. The chaos of the swarm could not break their resolve. Civilians began to see humans not as demons, but as saviors who moved boldly into danger when no one else would. By the end of the operation, the swarm had been disrupted, pushed back to the edges of the system, and several of its key control points had been disabled. It was a temporary victory, but one that gave breathing space to planets and colonies that had thought all hope lost. The humans gathered again on the flagship. The captain looked out at the stars, dark and still vibrating with distant threats. "We've done well," he said quietly. "But the fight isn't over. The swarm will return, stronger, smarter, and when it does, we'll be ready. We always are. But that doesn't matter. We fight because we can. We survive because we must. That's what humans do. That's why the galaxy is starting to notice us. Not angels, not saints, but humans, and they'll remember that." Where they had once hoped for angelic saviors, they now saw something more powerful, beings who combined audacity, creativity, and unyielding will. Beings who would not bow to darkness, even when the odds seemed impossible. For the first time, whispers spread across alien worlds. Humanity was not just another species. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with, unpredictable and unstoppable. They were not angels sent to bring peace. They were demons sent to survive, and in doing so, to save the galaxy. And as the humans prepared to move to the next system, the swarm's shadow still loomed, vast and unknowable. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had hope. Hope not born of miracles, but of determination, ingenuity, and the unbreakable spirit of a species that refused to surrender. The stars would remember this moment. The galaxy would remember. And humanity, in its own chaotic, fearless way, had begun to carve its legend across the cosmos. The galaxy held its breath. After weeks of skirmishes and daring maneuvers, the humans had pushed the swarm back in several systems, but its heart remained untouched. Every victory came at a cost, and even the most seasoned human commanders knew that the next encounter could be their deadliest. Yet there was no fear, only focus. Humanity did not wait for the impossible to become easy. They made it happen. The captain of the flagship stood on the bridge, staring at the holographic projection of the swarm. It writhed like living shadow, pulsing with energy that seemed to defy comprehension. Sensors picked up subtle shifts in its behavior, patterns that hinted at intelligence, at adaptation. It was learning from them. Every strategy the humans used was countered in ways small and unpredictable, testing them in new ways. "Sir," the lead scientist said, her voice tight with tension, "the swarm is changing faster than we anticipated. If we continue like this, it could overwhelm the outer colonies before we can intervene. We find its weakness and strike. Humans don't wait for safety, we create it." Soldiers trained for boarding operations, while medics and support crews readied for casualties that they hoped would never come. When they arrived at the next system, the swarm struck immediately. Tendrils of darkness snaked between planets, consuming atmosphere, energy, and anything that resisted. Human ships moved with precision, splitting into formations designed to confuse and distract the swarm. The first wave of drones was deployed, small but deadly, carrying energy disruptors and miniature EMP devices. The swarm reacted violently, splitting and adapting, but the humans had anticipated it. Missiles were launched, their paths constantly changing mid-flight, guided by AI that adapted faster than the swarm could respond. Ships twisted in three-dimensional maneuvers that made alien observers dizzy, dodging tendrils while striking at the heart of the darkness. On the surface of the largest planet, human strike teams moved among ruins to rescue survivors. Streets were fractured and unstable, buildings leaning at impossible angles. Civilians cowered in fear as the dark energy approached, but humans pressed forward, creating shields and pathways with portable generators. Every movement was calculated, every decision deliberate, and yet there was an improvisational quality that defied prediction. One young engineer laughed as she rerouted power to a field generator. "It's like dancing in the dark," she said, dodging falling debris. A soldier carrying supplies smiled. "Then dance fast because the music isn't slowing down." Ships that had survived previous encounters were being tested like never before. Human pilots dove close to tendrils that could crush their ships in moments, planting explosives and releasing energy pulses to destabilize the darkness. Every maneuver was risky, but every risk carried the potential for victory. Alien leaders, observing from their transport ships, whispered among themselves. They had expected angels, beings of light and grace who would intervene gently. Instead, they saw demons who fought with brilliance and audacity, saving lives through actions that seemed reckless, cruel, and miraculous all at once. Amid the chaos, the captain of the flagship coordinated the attack. "Focus on the tendrils closest to the colonies," he ordered. "Draw it out. Make it fight where we can control the battlefield." On the planet below, human teams continued their work, stabilizing structures and evacuating civilians. They moved with a speed and confidence that inspired hope in those they rescued. Children clung to soldiers, eyes wide with amazement, seeing not demons but guardians who could defy death and darkness alike. But the swarm was clever. It began to adapt to human tactics, sending tendrils in unpredictable directions, consuming energy to repair itself faster than before. The humans had anticipated adaptation, yet even they felt the pressure. It was no longer enough to react, they needed a decisive move. The captain convened his senior officers. "We have a chance to strike at its core," he said, voice steady. "It's dangerous, but it's our only chance to end this in any meaningful way. We go in, disrupt the control point, and disable the swarm's command. Everything else is distraction. Are we ready?" They would enter the densest part of the swarm, navigating through the heart of darkness to reach the source. Cloaking systems, adaptive shields, and experimental propulsion gave them a chance, but it was small. Failure meant total annihilation, yet no one hesitated. This was humanity's way, courage in the face of impossible odds. As they entered the swarm, the darkness reacted immediately, lashing out with tendrils and energy pulses. Ships twisted and turned, dodging attacks, releasing countermeasures and striking back with precision. The strike team pressed on, moving as one mind, improvising solutions to threats as they appeared. The source of the swarm came into view, a massive structure, suspended in the void, older than any known civilization. Its surface pulsed with energy, controlling the swarm as though it were a single entity. Humans scanned it rapidly, recording data, analyzing weaknesses, and planning a strike that could disrupt the entire system of darkness. Back on the planetary surfaces, humans continued to stabilize cities, rescue survivors, and repair vital infrastructure. Their presence alone inspired courage. The aliens who witnessed these actions began to understand a new truth. Humanity's methods were not random. They were not cruel for cruelty's sake. They were efficient, adaptive, and brilliant. Humanity did not wait for angels. They became the force that ensured survival. The strike team approached the core structure, releasing energy pulses to weaken its defenses. Tendrils lashed violently, but humans anticipated every move, adjusting tactics instantly. Explosives were planted in key points, and energy disruptors prepared to sever the structure's control over the swarm. Every second counted, every decision could mean life or death. The alien coalition watched, holding their breath. They had never seen beings operate with such audacity, intelligence, and synchronization. These humans were demons in action, yet in every move they saved lives that had been written off as lost. Finally, the core structure began to collapse under the combined human assault. The swarm faltered, tendrils retracting, energy pulses diminishing. The darkness recoiled, weakened but not entirely destroyed. It would take more time and effort to finish the threat, but the decisive strike had been made. Humans regrouped in orbit, exhausted but triumphant. Casualties had been suffered, but the cost was far less than had been expected. The strike had worked, and the swarm had been disrupted in a way that no alien technology could have achieved alone. The captain addressed his fleet. "We've made a dent in something ancient and dangerous. It's not over, but we've shown what humanity can do. We don't wait for miracles, we make them happen." They were not angels of light and grace. They were demons of chaos and ingenuity, unyielding and unstoppable. And yet, they had saved worlds that had been written off as lost. The humans prepared to move to the next system, leaving behind stabilized planets and rescued survivors. Their legend spread quickly among the alien populations, beings who laughed in the face of darkness, who fought with brilliance and audacity, and who did not rest until life was preserved. The galaxy had expected angels. It had received something far more extraordinary: humanity. A species that did not bend to rules, that did not wait for permission, that did not hesitate in the face of annihilation. Humanity had shown that survival was not a matter of waiting for hope. It was a matter of creating it. And as the human fleet disappeared into the void, the swarm recoiled, weakened but far from defeated. Humanity's work was not finished. Every system, every planet, every survivor depended on their ingenuity, courage, and unbreakable will. The stars watched silently as humans moved forward, unstoppable, unpredictable, and entirely human. The galaxy would never forget the day it realized that salvation sometimes came not from angels, but from demons who refused to surrender. The galaxy was tense. The swarm, though disrupted, had not been destroyed. It pulsed with dark energy across multiple systems, reorganizing itself, adapting faster than before. Every planet in its path trembled under the threat, and the alien coalition, while grateful for humanity's intervention, feared what might come next. On the flagship, the human captain gathered his officers. "This is it," he said, voice calm but firm. "We've tested its strength, we've found its weaknesses, now we finish it, or at least give the galaxy a chance to survive." Humanity had faced impossible odds before, and they would face them again. The first stage of the plan was reconnaissance. Small human ships, cloaked and fast, entered the densest parts of the swarm. Sensors scanned continuously, mapping energy flows and monitoring shifts in the darkness. It was like moving through a storm of shadows, unpredictable and dangerous. A single misstep could mean total annihilation. A young pilot laughed nervously. "Feels like flying through a living nightmare," she said, dodging a sudden pulse of energy that knocked a nearby drone off course. Her wingman smirked. "Then let's make it dance." Alien observers watched from afar, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. Humanity's methods were still chaotic to them, but the results were undeniable. Where angels would have faltered, humans advanced. Where miracles might have failed, humans succeeded. Once reconnaissance data was collected, the strike team moved in. Their mission: disable the swarm's core network. This structure, a massive artifact older than any known civilization, controlled the swarm's tendrils and energy flows. Destroy it, and the darkness would be cut off from its command. The approach was perilous. Tendrils lashed outward, consuming matter and energy, while pulses of dark energy threatened to disable the ship's systems. Pilots maneuvered with precision, weaving between attacks, releasing energy pulses to disrupt the swarm's defenses. Engineers on board worked at the same time, rerouting power from engines to shields, adjusting weapons, and repairing minor damages in real time. Inside the core, the strike team encountered resistance unlike anything before. Portions of the swarm seemed semi-conscious, attacking with coordinated precision. Humans adapted instantly, splitting into smaller units, each carrying out specialized tasks. Soldiers planted energy disruptors at key nodes, engineers hacked into alien systems integrated into the swarm, and scientists monitored fluctuations in energy that indicated critical weaknesses. Outside, the main fleet provided cover. Ships fired coordinated volleys, drawing attention away from the strike team. Drones released waves of interference that confused the swarm's sensors, giving humans moments of advantage. Each second was precious. Each action mattered. The aliens watched in awe. "They fight as one," one whispered, "but each of them acts individually." "How is this possible?" Civilians on nearby planets, watching through long-range communication networks, saw humans as something extraordinary, beings who would enter the heart of darkness to ensure their survival. Finally, the strike team reached the core. It was immense, pulsing with energy that radiated across the system. Disruptors were placed at calculated points, and the energy network began to destabilize. The swarm reacted violently, lashing outward in waves of destruction. Ships were tossed, systems overloaded, and tendrils flailed like furious serpents. Inside the core, the humans remained focused. Engineers adjusted energy disruptors in real time, soldiers defended the team from attacks, and scientists guided them to weak points in the structure. Every movement was synchronized, yet entirely adaptive, responding to threats as they arose. With a final command from the captain, the disruptors were activated simultaneously. Energy pulses surged, tearing through the swarm's network, severing tendrils and destabilizing the structure. The darkness writhed and convulsed, then began to collapse. Systems that had been lost were partially restored, and planets that had been threatened breathed again. The flagship trembled as the core imploded. A shockwave of energy radiated outward, pushing back the swarm across multiple systems. Darkness retreated, reorganizing slowly, but it was weakened. Humans had struck the decisive blow. Back on the planets, humans continued to stabilize survivors and repair critical infrastructure. Citizens emerged from shelters, witnessing a sight they had not imagined possible. Humans walking calmly through devastation, bringing life, hope, and order in the midst of chaos. Children pointed, their eyes wide with admiration. Adults whispered of courage and brilliance beyond comprehension. The aliens, witnessing these events, began to see humanity not as mere saviors, but as a force unlike any they had known. Angels had been requested, but demons had arrived. Demons who acted with brilliance, courage, and determination, saving worlds in ways no other species could. On the flagship, the captain addressed the fleet. "The swarm is not gone," he said. "It will adapt, it will return. But we've proven that survival is possible. We've shown that humans do not wait for miracles, we create them. We survive, we adapt, and we protect others. That is humanity." Humanity had not only survived, they had reshaped the very idea of what it meant to save lives across the stars. As the human fleet moved to the next system, rumors spread among alien colonies. Tales of humans who entered the heart of darkness, who fought against impossible odds, who adapted and survived, spread quickly. They were no longer seen merely as saviors. They were a force to be reckoned with, unpredictable and unstoppable. On the flagship, the captain looked out at the stars, dark and vast. "The galaxy has seen what we can do," he said quietly. "It will remember, we are not angels, we are not saints, we are humans. And the universe will know that we do not surrender." In the days that followed, the swarm continued to retreat and weaken. Systems that had been under threat began to rebuild. The alien coalition, once skeptical and fearful, now actively collaborated with humans, providing resources and knowledge, yet recognizing that it was humanity's ingenuity and courage that had turned the tide. Humans, ever adaptable, did not linger for praise. They moved from system to system, leaving behind stabilized worlds and inspired populations. Their actions created a ripple effect across the galaxy. Species that had once doubted themselves now began to hope, to fight, and to believe in survival. As the fleet departed for the next challenge, the captain addressed his crew once more. "We've done what many thought impossible. But our work is never done. Darkness will always exist. Life will always be fragile. And as long as we are here, humanity will be the light that refuses to be extinguished. Remember that." Humanity would continue to challenge the darkness, to fight where others faltered, and to survive against odds no one else would dare face. The galaxy had begged for angels. Humanity had answered in its own way, not with light or mercy, but with brilliance, audacity, and unyielding will. The stars themselves seemed to acknowledge it, shining faintly as if in recognition of a species that refused to surrender. And so humanity continued its journey, leaving behind a legacy of hope, courage, and awe. The swarm, once unstoppable, had been broken. The galaxy, once hopeless, now had a chance. And humanity, in its chaotic, fearless way, had proven that it was a force unlike any other, unpredictable, unstoppable, and entirely human. The stars would remember, the survivors would remember, and the galaxy would never again forget the day humanity arrived, not as angels, not as saints, but as demons who fought, survived, and saved worlds.